ALCTS Virtual Preconference Shared Collection Development. I'm Cindy Klein, a member of the ALCTS Program Planning Committee. Our presenter today is Athena Hebner. Athena is the Electronic Resources Librarian at the University of Central Florida. She has 17 years of experience in academic libraries. She began her career in reference and instruction, where she indulged her love of user services, then moved to library systems to indulge her fascination with computers and technology. Athena now serves in acquisitions. She oversees a $4 million eResources budget and manages technologies that provide and enhance access to the collection. Athena's work and research center on applying technology to connect users to content. Her projects explore usability, user interfaces, and technology for improving discovery of and access to information. Athena's presentation is titled eResource Sharing, Getting By with a Little Help from Your Friends. If you have questions for Athena, please type them into the question box on your screen. The presentation will be in 3 sections, and we will have questions after each section. If we do not get to your question, Athena will answer questions offline, and all participants will receive the answers by email. Also, please note today's session will be recorded, and you will receive an email with a link to the recording and slides in a few days. We don't currently have a chat function in the GoToWebinar software so that you can talk to other attendees, but if you like, please use the Twitter hashtag #ALCTSCE to talk further about today's session online. We will not be monitoring the Twitter feed during the presentation. There may be slight delays as we turn the presentation over to Athena.
Hello, can everyone see my screen now? I guess you can't answer, so if you can't see my screen, type a question and we'll see that. And I'm going to go forward, assuming that you can. Welcome and thank you for attending today. My topic is eResources, getting by with a little help from your friends. And it's a topic that's near and dear to my heart. I don't consider myself an expert on this, but I think that I do have some credentials I'll go over in a little bit. So my talk overview is I'm going to do a whirlwind overview of consortia and get into some particulars about UCF and its relationships to consortia and describe sort of the consortia and its effect on the eResources librarian and the library in general. And in the process we'll have some polls and you'll have some chances for questions. So my view is from the trenches. I've been a librarian working with electronic resources for, about 12 years now, and I consider myself pretty seasoned as an eResources librarian and also a longtime participant in consortia. I have been on the State Electronic Resources Committee, and I've twice been the chair of that. So before I get too much farther along, I'd like to know a little bit about you. So I'm going to start with a poll here. See if I can do this poll right. First, I'm going to ask, what is your role in the library? Tell me a little about yourself. I don't see that showing up. Oh, good. 23% voted. I see that we're getting a lot of acquisitions in electronic resources librarians. And just a few more seconds and then I'll turn this back over to show you all the results. 91% voted. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close this. So we had 65% acquisitions librarians, 55% electronic resources librarians. I'm guessing there's got to be some overlap there. So some of this may be familiar to many of you, and hopefully I'll have some tidbits that you didn't know. Now, the next poll question is, what is your library type? So I'm curious whether you're from academic or from public or special. So here we go. 100% academic so far. Oh, here we go, a couple of public and special. And I'm going to go ahead and close this. So we've got a lot of academic acquisitions and eResources librarians here today. Very good. I apologize if the timing on these is awkward. I'm not actually able to see the same screens as you. Okay, so moving along then. So I'm going to do a real quick overview of consortia types, who they serve, what types of services they offer, and the roles that they provide for eResources. All right. My source of information about consortia in general would be ALCTS. And if you've never heard of them, they're well worth checking out. They are an international coalition of library consortia representing over 200 library consortia. But that's going to mean thousands and thousands of libraries represented and millions of eResource spending. I'm sorry, I'm getting a message that the PowerPoint summary screen and the notes, I beg your pardon, sorry, a strange message just came up. So the I'm going to try and fix, I've been told that I'm showing my notes as well, including my little typo there. And I only want to show you the PowerPoint slides. So hold on a second. I'm going to change which screen is showing. All right. Well, while I wait for a response on that, so ALCTS is representing millions and millions in spending, and they have a lot of influence of over vendors and pricing and terms because of how many library they represent. They also influence the development of library standards and can act as a sounding board for new ideas. So if you're not familiar with ALCTS, visit their site, which is about what I'm about to do here. Just a whirlwind tour of them. So this is the ALCTS homepage, and they have a directory of participating libraries, or I'm sorry, participating consortia, and you can see the tabs for their other services. And if you go into the participating consortia directory, you can search for a particular consortia, or you can just browse. And I searched for Lyrasis. And finally, here's the results that came up. I apologize, some weird things are happening with my screen right now, and I don't know why. So, but it gives you a nice description of what Lyrasis does, a narrative overview of what they're trying to accomplish. And the entry also tells you what services they offer and some details about their functions and the libraries they serve. It also tells you somewhat about their governance and legal standing. All right. So I did a review of all the libraries and consortia in their directory, and there were 151 in the directory. That is not 100% of the libraries consortia that are out there. The website mentions that there are 200 ICOLC members, so participating consortia. So I know that this isn't all of them, but it's a pretty big chunk, and you can see they're very large. So InfoHio has 2,380 libraries participating. And it goes on down to the top 10 list. Number 10 at TechShare still has 700 participating libraries. These often represent large regional areas or even entire countries. So I also examined the types of libraries served, and academics were by far the most common type. Followed by special and public. All right. Now, many of the consortia can serve more than one library type. So there were 73 that served multiple type libraries. So they were serving academics and specials and other types as well. There were 73 that served academic that were multi-type. So every single multi-type consortia is serving academic library in that directory, whereas only 52 were serving public libraries, 64 special libraries, and 27 school libraries. For the single type, academics really are the predominant type, followed then by, well, 3 each for public, special, and school consortia types. So academics are strong both as single and as multi-type consortia participants. Now, I think they're more likely to be have a consortia represent them for a variety of reasons. I think that they have a ready-made, often legislative structure for governance and funding, or shared funding. So it makes it easier, I think, for them to participate in consortia and participate in single-type consortia. So the services that are listed in the directory for ICOLC, we've got electronic content licensing, training, collection sharings, and so forth. There's a whole range of services that are offered. The most common, of course, electronic content licensing. Now, exactly what is meant for each service will vary from consortia to consortia. So looking, for instance, at electronic resources licensing, I'm going to get into that in more detail, but that could mean anything from just negotiating a good deal to negotiating specific terms for a journal package. So I'm going to try a poll again, and hopefully it will work. Does your library participate in a consortia? So here, let me open up that poll for you. Now I can't find my poll panel. The poll seems to have disappeared from my controls. So if one of the tech people is on, if you could help me out with that, that would be appreciated. All right, I'm going to go ahead and skip the poll because I don't have the ability to open it anymore. It disappeared from my list of controls. I apologize.
Athena, this is Vicki.
Yeah.
I'm going to break in for a second.
Thank you.
So if you want to go up to View, make sure Polls
okay.
is clicked next to that.
There it is. Okay. Thank you.
And then when you switch back to your PowerPoint, if you want to go to, so what we're seeing here in the audience is your screen with the smaller slides and your notes. If you could,
that's odd. Okay, I will try.
Put that into like a full presentation.
I had done that, I thought, but if you'll break in, if it's not showing right, because
Sure.
I can't see what you're seeing. So,
no, that's fine. That's
okay.
Fine.
Polls first, and then hopefully fixing the display. And my apologies to everyone. All right.
So the poll is up right now.
Okay.
And 80% have voted.
Does your library participate? Great. So I'll go ahead and hide that one. So it was 65% do participate in 3 or more, 20% participate in 1, 15 in 2. And what consortia services? Okay. So I'll leave that for a moment. All right, so a lot of shared cataloging and a lot of electronic resources licensing, interlibrary loan, training. Everyone is using the services pretty broadly. I'm going to go ahead and close and show this one. All right, you can see that electronic resources licensing is a very popular service to use. And all the other ones are pretty well utilized as well. So hide that. And now see if I can get this to work properly.
So from this screen, Athena, go to Slideshow on the top. And then you should be able to go to some sort of presentation view.
Okay, I see Show My, and I pick Screen, and then I can do Screen 1, Monitor 1, Screen 2. How is that?
Yes, that is exactly what we want.
Oh, thank goodness. I am so sorry about the problem before.
That's okay. I'm glad we got that fixed.
Okay. Okay, so the services that's most commonly provided is electronic resource licensing. And it seems to like an inevitable result of library consortia. I mean, it's obvious that libraries will want to talk about what collection items they want to get, and they'll want to seek better prices. So it's a pretty inevitable result. Okay. So here's one example. This is one type of electronic content licensing. It's basically a buyer's club model. This is a group of discounts that Lyrasis has negotiated for their member libraries, and any member library can select to participate in any of these. The exact price and range of the discount may depend on how many libraries decide to participate. There's a lot of benefit to both the vendors and the libraries to participate in this kind of deal. The vendor gets to negotiate once instead of with each member library. They get marketing for their product, and the discount may attract more buyers. The libraries get a lower price. They don't have to negotiate with the vendor, and there may be potentially other benefits depending on what other services the library, the consortia offers to the library. For instance, if the consortia offers MARC record loads or managing your open URL service, then they already know what you've purchased and can handle the rest of that pretty easily for you. So it can be a great deal. There can be a whole suite of services that would be covered in the electronic content licensing. It's really everything. They can coordinate the selection, negotiate good pricing and terms, handle invoicing and fund transfers, and so forth. Everything listed here can be done by a consortia depending on the mission of the consortia and whether or not they have the authority to do it. So I think one of the main differences between those two types of electronic resources services would be who's going to pay and if there's a mandate. So when a consortia is like eResource, they don't have a mandate to serve UCF per se. We can participate if we want. It's all opt-in. Our other consortia, FLVC, has funding that they use specifically to buy a shared collection for us, and they have a mandate to serve the libraries in particular ways. It comes straight from the Florida government. So the truth is, though, that we do a bit of both with different consortia. So even though we have the mandated funded collection through FLVC, we also have some library opt-in databases that we buy collectively. All right, this is a good time to pause for questions and for me to take a breath now that everything's showing properly. So does anyone have any questions? All right, no questions right now. I'll move on. I'm going to get a little bit more into the specifics of consortia and UCF. So UCF participates in several consortia. We have a large FTE and I wouldn't call it large, materials budgets that gets us by for our size. We spend a lot of our materials budget on journals, 2,700,000 on journals, and then a fair amount on eBooks and other types of resources and databases. So these numbers come from our 2011-2012 annual report. So it's all published information. Let me go into a little bit more detail about the deals we have with ACRL, CRL, eResource, FLVC, and subconsortia. So through these consortia, we license all sorts of different electronic resource types. I want to ask you briefly whether you're getting these types of resources through consortia or if it's a more limited set. So one more poll. So UCF gets a lot of database subscriptions through FLVC and some through eResource. We have a lot of eJournal subconsortial deals, eBook collections both through broad consortia and local consortia, some media collections and digitized collections, special digitized microform records and so forth. Okay, I'm going to close this and post it. Looks like you all are getting a lot of database subscriptions, 100% participation with that. And I think that's really quite common. They're much easier to deal with than some of the other types. Now, the big deal eJournal packages, I'd be curious whether those are through a local consortia or with one of the larger regional, but that will be for a different chat. And a lot of eBook packages, which surprises me because they can be difficult, and then some PDA and some digitized collections. So let's close this and move along. So UCF participates in ACRL, CRL, and Lyrasis. These are all opt-in style consortia. Our spend with them can be a bit of a mystery, and I think that is because we haven't, most of the time these are one-time purchases with these sources. Lyrasis is an exception in that they do handle some recurring subscriptions for us, and we make payments to them. So I know how much we spend with them, but if we made a one-time purchase with them, I don't necessarily have that tracked in any space. Because it's a done deal, I don't have to manage it on an ongoing basis. So unless you consciously decide that you want to track that spend, then it may disappear into the ether. And I just realized that when I was putting this slide set together that, I really maybe should start noting that somewhere easy to find. But the Association of Southeastern Regional Libraries has a general academic focus. Their deals tend to be one-time cost and perpetual rights. They do a lot of digitized archives, ebook publisher packages, and that kind of deal. When you get these slides sent to you, these are links to the pages that show you the specific deals that are on offer right now. Center for Research Libraries is one of the more esoteric consortia that we deal with. We are a relatively new member to them. They offer some unusual services. I think it's well worth looking at their webpage. They do offer the option to load the MARC records for their collection and then couple that with document delivery of items from their collection or access to electronic versions. A lot of digitized collections for sale. They have a procedure where they poll libraries to decide which deals to pursue. It's including purchasing microfilm or digitizing microfilm sets. Lyrasis is formerly Solinet, and it joined up with Polynet and I think some other consortia which I have forgotten, but I could look it up on ICOL's site. They serve all library types and they provide a strong suite of services including electronic resources but also physical items. So they negotiate sort of buyer's club deals for all kinds of electronic resources. All right, moving on to our other two consortia, FLVC and then sub-consortia deals. So this is where a lot of my activity with consortia really is focused. UCF has $3,425,000. Let me try that again. Not UCF. FLVC has a $3,425,000 spend on the behalf of the SULs. This is money that is legislated and given to them for building shared collection. Now I put FCLA spend there because FCLA was our consortia up until last year, which it was replaced by FLVC. I'm going to talk about that some more in a bit. We also have a lot of sub-consortial deals, and this is where I put some UCF spend. We spend $1,800,000 to participate in some shared journal collections. So it's a pretty big chunk of our materials budget that's going to consortial spends in addition to what is spent on our behalf. All right, so some key facts about FCLA. They are really a long-term partner for the state university system here in Florida. They started in 1984. They have a legislated budget that they get to spend on our behalf. They have acquired a collection of 190 electronic resources approximately. It's always a little bit iffy on how you count eResources. That is from 17 different vendors, and they represent all the state university system university, it's the Florida State University System libraries. That's 213,000 FTE. So in 2013, they transitioned to FLVC. Which now has a combined collection budget. This is just adding together the community college or the state community, oh, I'm sorry, they keep changing the name. There's a Florida State College's budget and the state university budgets for $7 million in budget to spend on a collection. Unfortunately, because the collections are still not integrated, I really can't tell you what the collection size or the number of vendors represented is because they're still working on integrating the collections. But it represents 39 different universities and colleges together and 585,000 FTE. So a little bit about how these work. So a tale of change, how we decide things together. The first incarnation for deciding how to spend that allocated budget for the FCLA was the Electronic Collections Committee. We had a pretty simple charge of selecting and renewing eResources, and we had a process that originally started with dots and super dots. So each member librarian would get, I think it was 5 dots and 3 super dots, and you could put them by the resource that you wanted, and there was the super dot counted as 3, or I don't remember all the details. This was back in 1999. There was one committee member per library, 1 voting member per institution. So the law libraries and the medical libraries had representation, but their institution only got to vote once. We have monthly conference calls, and it really helped establish channels of communication, procedures for cooperation, norms for distributing and cost, and it really evolved into a much more rich set of activities. We started talking about statistics and the interface for the catalog and pretty much anything to do with electronic resources we would talk about. So that process led to the collection. This is the distribution of the types of things that we selected. So we had aggregator databases, indexing databases, and then a smattering of other types. Very, very strong on the indexing and abstracting with some aggregator full text. So the second iteration was the CPC, the Collection Planning Committee, combined with the Electronic Resources Subcommittee. This came about because the Electronic Resources Collection Committee had started having the more complicated deals, including the e-journal packages, that started committing libraries to maintain subscriptions to journals. And there was also interest in having some shared eBook collections and other things that involved perhaps a little bit more authority than was represented on the Electronic Collections Committee level. So this new layer was added. The Collections Planning Committee quite often was the head of acquisitions or collections at the library, whereas the Electronic Resources Subcommittee was usually electronic resources librarians. So they coordinated the print and electronic resources. They talked about things like shared storage facilities. I don't know if any of you heard of Janus, but that was a whole set of sort of discussions and task forces around shared print collections, shared ebook collections, all sorts of coordinated sharing for libraries. So the CPC really upped the game for involvement of the universities and coordinating their activities. They maintained a very similar decision structure, though. All right, then FLVC came along last year in July, and this may be a little bit small for you, but it's just showing the two different systems and the vendors they have dealings with and the spend they had. So this new committee is, this new FLVC needed a new way to decide how to handle this budget and do some shared collection decisions. It was a government-mandated change. FLVC actually does quite a lot more than just the eResources collection, which I'll show a slide in a little bit of some of their other projects. But it really required the Florida colleges and the Florida universities to make joint decisions from a single budget. And this was their original idea for how that decision-making would work. And I believe this was just intended to be sort of temporary. So you would have the CPC and the ERS from the universities on one track and the colleges on the other tracks, moving up through their usual structures, going to the executive committee for FLVC and on up to a decision. But that's not all. So the third incarnation created the Collection Management and eResources Committee. That's 10 members, 5 from the universities, 5 from the colleges, and they are trying to merge those two collections, and it's really a bear of a task. So they've developed scenarios for a uniform collection, and they've developed actually 2 different scenarios. One that would be the same collection for every participant, and another set of them would be distinct collections for the SULs and the Florida state colleges. They surveyed all of the members to see what their interests were in the various databases that were on the table from either one side or the other. Because there's 39 member institutions, we all can't be on the committee. That would just be too many. So they're really having to rely on those survey results and rely on the representation in the one committee. A lot of things are still in flux, so I'm not sure exactly how their decision process is going to turn out in the end. All right. So these are some other projects that FLVC takes on. I'm not going to read them all, but you can see they've got a lot on their plate. Electronic resources is a very small piece of it overall. It's a small piece, but it's an important piece. So this is just the table of contents of the report they issued. It's 44 pages long, and it presents these different scenarios that they might try out for setting up our shared collection. So merging these two consortia has not been an insignificant task. One of the things that the state university libraries are a little concerned about is the loss of some of our more specialized content that's been paid for over the years through the FCLA funds, like InSpec and Compendex. There's really not a demand for those in the community colleges. So we're expecting a lot of change. On top of that, there's still a lot of things that need to be decided just among the SULs. We have to coordinate our electronic journal subscriptions, and we have some ongoing discussions about PDAs and so forth. So there is a collections advisory committee that is just for dealing with those issues. And finally, there's another level entirely, that's the library deans and directors and the provost. The deans and directors really all along have been the deciding body. The committees make recommendations and the deans and directors decide. They occasionally will take a hands-on approach, but usually they would just approve the recommendations. The big journal stills, though, did get their attention, and I'll talk about that some more. And it also caught the attention of the provost because of the level of money involved. So what is the big deal with the big deals? So UCF spend, as I said before, is 1,800,000, but the SUL spend is 14 million on these shared collections of e-journals, these big deal e-journal packages. That's giving us all collectively some 6,500 titles that we can access. Now UCF has 17% of the FTE, but we're paying about 13% of the cost for these journal packages. That's because the costs were historically based on our subscriptions, and things have changed over the years. So it throws wrinkles into the works and catches people's attention. So here's a few graphs about the total SUL spend. The bar height represents 100% of the cost of each of these databases, and the gold portion is what UCF's portion is that they're paying. Here's another way to look at it. The list prices would be if the university was buying each and every title on the list, and these were my best estimates based on some current title list prices from each of the publishers. So for example, with Sage, if we were to buy every title in the package, we would be paying 345% of what is being paid by the state university system right now. UCF is only paying for about 37% of that list price. Let me make sure I said that right. I think I said it backwards. I beg your pardon. The SUL spends 345% on that package. If we were to buy every title in the package, it would be represented by the green bar. I'm sorry I couldn't be more specific, but I had to keep the prices confidential, so these graphs got a little strange and difficult to explain. But so 100% of the list price is represented by the green bar for buying one of every title in the package. The SULs are paying for 345% of that list price to get access to those titles for all 11 institutions. But our use of these is quite strong. You can see that UCF, for instance, pays for 287 Elsevier titles historically, but we're using 1,979 and so forth. So even though the big deals are big, I think they're a good deal. For several of the packages, UCF is using 100% of the titles available, even though we're paying for a small portion of the titles. Okay, and finally a little bit about the eBook deals, and then we'll move on to some questions. We have historically had some fairly simple eBook deals, and these are the simpler ones represented here. Netlibrary was really one of the very first shared eBook models out there. The shared collections through Solinet let a group of libraries opt in to participate in the collection. They wasn't sure what the title list was going to be or what the price was going to be, but if you opted in, you would then get to vote on the titles included, and then you could have one simultaneous user into the title. It was pretty strict DRM, so we got a lot of content for very cheap, but a lot of grief about how it could be used. GEL virtual reference libraries we were able to purchase because there was a credit from GEL one year, and we needed to expend it with GEL products. We got that credit because the state had picked up one of the titles we were subscribing to, and we ended up purchasing over the years a collection of 60 different titles that we all have equal access to. The Cambridge Books Online Psychology Collection was funded when there was a little bit of money left over after our renewals, and we based the selection on WorldCat collection analysis project that was done, where we examined the different programs that were offered at each university, and then the content that we had represented in WorldCat. And I would say that all of these turned out to be pretty successful. Netlibrary was purchased by EBSCO, and it's been sort of an ongoing issue with the one-user access, but otherwise it's been quite a good deal. We're still trying different models. ACERL recently had an EBL model where if one library purchased a book, any of the other participating libraries could purchase that book for 40% discount. Very good pricing, but surprisingly low participation. I think it was because there was no way to find out which books were discounted, and because each library has their own collection needs. The SULs are still trying to work out a PDA deal. They've been working on this for a while, and they're focusing on a deal with COOTS for 3,500 titles. I'm sorry, yeah, 3,500 titles from 24 publishers. The details of this are still a little bit murky. It's being worked out as far as I know. All right, are there any questions before we move on to the next section? Okay, no questions? We'll move on. So I'm going to talk a little bit now about consortia and the role of the eResources librarian and how they work together. I think I've touched a lot on that already, and many of you are electronic resources librarians, so you already know. But it really touches on most aspects of my work, from collection decisions, licensing, on down through usage statistics and branding and everything. So just a few examples from this. So if I'm negotiating a local license, it's good if the library maybe can just put an addendum onto a license that is already in existence. And we get quite a few of these, and we'll have a license for Elsevier content through FLVC. And then we can just have a one-page addenda that says, and we're adding this major reference work. But there can be problems if UCF's administration is suddenly seeing addendum to a license and they want to see the license that it's an addendum to, and they see a license they didn't negotiate and maybe don't recognize as from an authority that should be able to negotiate for us. That has actually been not exactly a problem, but slowed the process down for us a few times. So it's important to make sure that you get copies of the licenses that are negotiated and can provide them to your local institution. Not only that, but the negotiated terms may be inconsistent with what you try and negotiate locally. I know that some universities have very specific language they want in about interlibrary loan or course reserves, and the consortium may not get that language. It may not be a priority. So local collections and acquisitions. Obviously, the consortium provides significant subscription content that you don't have to pay for out of your local budget. But we've had instances where the consortia members just could not agree on a platform, so we all ended up paying a platform fee so we could get the database on the particular platform we wanted. Or you may not have that option and you end up with a platform that's different from the other databases on the same topic. Yeah, or you may be forced to use a different agent that you want. We usually use EBSCO, but we have a medical library consortia that prefers Ovid, or I'm sorry, not Ovid, that's true as well, but Horassowitz. So we have a small set of journals that go through a different agent. Obviously, there can be some content overlap, and you can't drop one database or the other. And the library may need to be prepared to pick things up, like the InSpec and Compindex. If that doesn't end up as part of the consortial shared collection, we're going to face a very steep local price for those databases. And the savings that we get from the other databases they pick up, like the Chronicle of Higher Education, may not make up the difference. Probably won't. So a little bit about statistics. I think consortia have great potential for sharing statistics and data. And Counter provides nice standardized reports, so it should be easy. And Sushi provides a way to gather those reports. So if the consortia is gathering the statistics, then everything is kind of peachy, except for even then you can run into problems where they are gathering the statistics for the content that they license, but you may get other databases from that same vendor and you're having to go and get the statistics anyway, so it's duplicating work. Not only that, but the stats, if you start comparing them across institutions, they're easily affected by whether or not the institution has a web scale discovery or federated search service, link placement, or even the order of the links in your OpenURL resolver can all have a big impact on the statistics. So when administrators start trying to compare across institutions, it looks wonky and you have to try and explain why one institution may have higher statistics than another institution and whether or not it's really being underutilized. So even though it seems like they should be the same, they really can be hard to compare. Not only that, but locally owned content can be hard to sort out. So for instance, in Elsevier, UCF has subscriptions that are not part of the shared deal, but I can't sort those out of the Counter report. They're all in there. So I can't just use one number easily and say this is our usage and you can compare it to any other institution's usage. And the particulars of downloading statistics can be surprisingly annoying if people aren't very careful. I tried to get each of the universities to send me their Counter reports, JR1 report, and I thought it would be very easy for me to compare and see who was using what, how much. But it turned out that if they downloaded it one way with Unicode selected, then some of the titles would display one way, and other time if they used a different option, then there would be odd characters in the title, and it really was not as easy to compare as you would expect, or at least as I expected. So it can take a little bit of work and it can be misleading. And there's other issues too. I'm not going to go through them all in detail because I'm running low on time, but there can be disagreements about what to buy and platforms and subscription periods, and definitely you can have some mission creep with your consortia relations, particularly the local ones. Mission revisions, mergers like the one we're seeing with FCLA and FLVC, or CCLA to form FLVC. So there can be some complications, but I think is well worth it. This is from a cost avoidance report prepared in 2011, and 2011. FCLA at that time saved us approximately 53% over what we would be paying if we were subscribing individually. So that's a huge benefit to us. And that's just for the electronic resources licensing. And we get so many other services from them and other consortia. I think it's well worth it. So what makes for a good consortia? They need to be closely aligned. The members need to have a closely aligned mission and collection needs. They need good channels of communication. And authority, I think, is really important. Authority and trust. So if the members of your electronic collections committee or equivalent don't have the authority to make recommendations, that can be a problem. And if the consortium doesn't have the authority to negotiate for the library, then it's really not going to work. You need to have an acceptable and fair method of distributing cost and representing the members. There needs to be an acceptable process for making decisions, and stable and predictable funding. So that's what I think makes for a good consortia. I presented a question to ICOLC. They have a discussion list. And I asked them what makes for a good consortia member, a library member. And I just have a smattering of their answers, and then I'll let you guys ask questions. So I'm not going to read all these. I'll just go through them quickly. So, but they like involvement and support. They want strong member relationships, collegial relationships between the members and the consortia. Accurate institutional information. So you need to be able to communicate your IPs, your FT, and so forth. They want you to share solutions, not just problems. You need to be responsive in communicating and timely. They want you to view the consortia as a partnership that you turn to. And they want you to rely on them. Finally, well, not finally, they want you to have realistic expectations about what they may be able to do for you. So if you say you want to negotiate a really low price for APA, but you can't walk away from it, there may not be much they can do. And finally, prompt payment. All right, so that's all I have for today. If you want to learn more about consortia, here's some interesting papers you might want to check out, and of course try the ALCTS website. Finally, do you have any questions? All right, it looks like no questions. Cindy, do you want to take over?
Sure. Thank you, Athena, for the discussion on sharing e-resources. And let's see if I can get my screen moved over. I also want to thank all of our attendees. We hope you found today's session useful. You'll soon receive a short online evaluation form. Please take a few minutes to respond to the questions and return the form to us, as your comments help ALCTS plan new offerings. I'd also like to thank Iping Chen Gaffey, Felicity Dykes for providing technical support for today's webinar, as well as Julie Reese and Vicki Gruzinski in the ALCTS office. Our technical support experts make it possible for us to present these webinars smoothly. Information about all ALCTS continuing education offerings can be found on the ALCTS homepage under Online Learning. There are a couple of pre-conferences in ALA Annual Conference in Chicago. And I also wanted to remind you that ALCTS web courses run throughout the year. We have another upcoming virtual pre-conference on loan agreements for exhibit materials. We also have events at ALA Annual in Chicago. And if you are interested in presenting a conference or a webinar, please take a look at the ALCTS website for more information on that. Thank you for joining us this afternoon, and we hope that you will participate in other ALCTS continuing ed events in the future.